Yes. So with us presenting the project today, this would not be possible without our last year's HCI interns. Those are Jacob Shob and Riley Gronwalder, as well as over in the corner there, Assistant Director Arthur Fink, as well as, of course, the EPA. Ultimately, the Hospital Climate Initiative. Apologies for the incorrect breakup of the acronym. That is Hospital Climate Initiative. That is under the SRA. That is an EPA-funded program. We take the American tax dollars and try to send them to rural hospitals in our region. Our mission is the Health Sector Climate Pledge. This is a emissions reduction pledge. We're looking to have 50% emissions reduction in hospitals by the year 2030 and 100%, meaning net zero emissions, by 2050. This is fairly difficult, and the way to start that is by determining a baseline. Find out what the situation is right now. To that end, interns assist hospitals by visiting 6 hospitals per year. We visited 6 sites. Well, the other team visited 6 sites in 2023. We visited 6 more in 2024, performed an energy audit, and calculate a variety of savings, as well as we can perform any engineering calculations that the site requests. Very often, we'll find some sort of active maintenance or renovation procedure, and if the usually one maintenance person, one full-time engineer at the facility wants our help, we're happy to provide it. You give one report to each hospital with those changes in their outcomes.
Yeah, so our services was meant to help this hospital save energy, save costs, improve the environment for both staff and patients. So during the course of these, in the past few weeks and months, we've been going to different hospitals. So you can see them, the Rush County Hospital, William, and down to Morris County Hospital. Those are the areas that we visited and then carried out detailed energy audits.
For context, with the last year of the program, they were kind of mainly sticking up around Manhattan with a couple of ventures into, say, Hayes and surrounding regions. But we really tried this year to branch out across the state of Kansas.
So these are some of the projects that we looked at exclusively, and then we also did add some of the new things that we discovered while going to these different hospitals that we'll discuss later on in the slides. But these are some of the projects that in 2023 and 2024 intern we kind of like stayed consistent on, and then we looked at the building lighting, the water losses, cafeteria, air systems, envelopes, as well as the thermal pipe installations. So we're going to take them one after the other as we go down the slides. So in the lightnings in this facility, we identified that a lot of these facilities still rely heavily on fluorescent tubes, which is has a lot of higher energy consumptions. Takes a lot of money also to run and then have a lower lifespan compared to the LEDs, which has a higher lifespan, low energy use, and then it helps you save a lot of money. And then we found out that about 2 to 50% of these hospitals are kind of like shifting to the LEDs thing. And then from our cost analysis, we found that these switching totally to LED, you have a lot of huge costs and energy savings. And then they have very juicy payback period.
It was always recommended. If there was a partial conversion underway, we always recommended a full conversion as soon as possible. This is one of the areas of source reduction where the evidence is quite clear. The cost savings are there.
We also looked at occupancy sensors in different rooms, patient rooms, hallways, restrooms, and name it. So we also found that they are very, very helpful in reducing the amount of energy that's being consumed, and also help these hospitals save a lot of money, since these hospitals are, some of them are resource starved. So we are looking at areas to help them save resources and all that. We also looked into partial lighting. For example, we have fluorescent tube 4 in this sets. We are looking at areas where you can actually light too, especially like in emergency areas where you need 24 hours of lighting and all that. So we looked at exploring partial lighting where we kind of like put or light 2 bulbs at a time, depending on.
That's not always possible given ballast constraints, and when it's not, we look at dimmable lighting stuff. And in this room, exactly, these lights are controlled by one switch, these lights are controlled by another, just simple stuff like that. It's a way to save electricity in non-emergency areas.
So we also looked at water losses in these facilities. We found that they are pretty well maintained. the only places we found significant wastage was in the taps, especially in sinks and which lack aerators. So we kind of like run into taps that went into like 4 to 9 gallons per minute, which leads to significant water loss and also money is going. So we recommended installing aerators and regularly checking these taps to make sure that these aerators are still functional and it will help them save money and save resources. Another important area that we visited is the cafeteria, the kitchen. So we found that a mix of reusable and disposable. In fact, one of the facilities we found out that these hospitals are using over 70% reusable and then they are styrofoam, which are not very, very healthy for humans and also for the environment. So a lot of other hospitals are maybe a mix of 50-50 of the reusable and disposable, probably due to the COVID restrictions at the time, but some of these restrictions have gone down a bit because COVID is no longer as dangerous as it used to be. So we actually recommend switching back to usables when necessary and all that, and also helping them kind of like do the cost analysis of switch on the styrofoams to probably more degradable materials like cardboard or paper plates.
There are a lot of areas in this cafeteria and just in hospitals in general throughout all industry where a driving problem is not really a problem, just another factor is regulations. Keeping well apprised of the regulations and knowing when they've changed is very important. The regulations around hospitals that force them to use disposable during COVID, a lot of those went down in May. But if your company or your hospital is not keeping apprised of regulations, you're not going to be aware of the opportunities presented.
And since some of these hospitals they prepare food for both staff and patients, so they run into a lot of and because of lack of storage facilities in some of these facilities, they tend to dispose some of these foods. So we recommend that these hospitals kind of like go into on-site composting, donate food donations to help maybe prisons or other facilities around.
Lots of farmers would love to take compost from a large facility with a large food output.
Also, we also help them look into increasing their storage facilities, but some of those calculations ended up not being so sweet because we did a calculation for a working freezer for a hospital, but it turned out that what the working would consume was way higher than what those small units of freezers have or is taking at the moment. So it wasn't the project that they were really going to go into based on costs, cutting down costs, and then maybe also like the environmental aspect of the project. So we kind of like ask them to continue using what they are doing, except maybe their idea of going into the working was different, from saving money and then saving the environment. So we also carried out system audits. We found little or no leaks in most of these hospitals. I guess most of their air systems are well maintained. It's a hospital, and then they're pretty much careful because they're dealing with human lives, and most of the fuel leaks, is something that they could fix on site and all that. Major discovery that we made is most of the oxygen tanks had an ice buildup at the base, and because some of these oxygen tanks are being maintained by private or a third-party person, they don't have a direct, responsibility to fix that. So we recommend that they keep in touch with those who are their third-party agent to get those stuff fixed.
In general, there's a lot of excellent third-party maintenance that's done for especially medical systems. So like autoclaves are very often, you'll have the company that created the autoclave coming down every couple of months. And a good third-party maintenance contract can really be make or break for having effective equipment in your system.
So we also looked at the building envelope, the roof, the doors, and the windows and stuff. So we looked for insulation, and then we found out that most of these doors and windows lacked insulation, either because they are not properly checked, and then they are not regularly checked too. So they are worn out, and then they need replacement. So we found out that single or double pane windows are more energy efficient compared to the single pane windows. So we also advise this hospital, to shift towards the double pane windows, especially when they're doing renovations and stuff. Upfront cost, it might be more expensive to do all the double pane over the single pane, but in terms of energy efficiency, and then cost of maintenance in the long run using the double pane seems to be the smart idea. And then we also recommend, regular checks on the doors and windows to make sure that they are properly insulated to prevent, thermal loss.
There's also an element in the building envelope where if you're not okay, if there's a lot of windows that can be opened in a facility but really don't need to be, yeah, you can put, the weatherproofing and stuff on the windows. You can also just caulk them shut. And this is, you end up getting into an argument of, staff comfort and, just really, kitchen staff especially really enjoy that thing of fresh air. But is it medically necessary? Is it economically productive? Well, from our strictly environmental analysis, it puts more wear on the HVAC system. And so we recommend not having windows, regularly open, just caulk them shut, unless it's like a negative pressure room where you need that kind of air.
So we also looked at the thermal pipes installation. So we used the clear camera to look for temperature contrast, high low temperatures in the utility rooms. So we found several pipes that need insulation to prevent thermal loss. We also looked at the boiler systems, and then we found a closed loop system more energy efficient compared to the open loop system, because the closed loop system, there is a steady reheat of the same water and stuff, and then recirculation. So you spend less energy trying to reheat water and all that.
No steam traps, less
Exactly.
points of failure.
Yeah. So those are like some of the findings that will be in the utility rooms. And these are some of the new projects that we added to this our own intern, and some of them are like the anesthetic systems. We looked at the refrigerant replacement and then wind variables.
We also, looked at many other areas, but these three came with very regular recommendations, or in the case of anesthetics, actually not recommendations. On the anesthetic area, there's mainly two things we looked at: is the type of anesthetic and certain innovations on the mechanical system itself. But the type of anesthetic, as you might remember from Carrie's presentation, we found that sevoflurane, with the lowest global warming potential, the lowest emissions risk of all them, is usually the one we recommended. But another area we looked at are the mechanical systems for the anesthetic. A lot of older facilities will use a centrally piped anesthetic system, which has a lot of very costly leaks. We usually recommended shutting those systems down. In some facilities, they really like having that laughing gas system because it's really helpful with pediatric patients, with kids. But especially if they're already had some portable anesthetic machines, we'd recommend switching entirely to those. There was also this thing called the DGSS valve. This is a valve you install on a portable anesthetic machine, and on the tin, it looks like it would reduce your anesthetic use by maybe 92%. It would make sure, like the thing Carrie was talking about with those pre-breathing systems, it would help eliminate wasted anesthetic gas. But we consistently found the system was just too highly priced at the moment, and we never recommended any new anesthetic equipment to be installed. In the area of refrigerant replacement, this is something new that we looked at in 2024. It's unlike most of our recommendations. This isn't something you can just do at the drop of a hat. Most HVAC systems, especially the compressors in them, are designed only to work with a certain fluid as their refrigerant. So really, this is more of a recommendation that when you're getting a new HVAC system, here are the best chemicals you can use, the ones that probably aren't going to be regulated anytime soon. We found a lot of R22 and R410A. That's not that good for the environment. We like replacing those. We really like replacing them with R32, which has a very intermediate environmental effect. It is not at all perfect. It's not a natural refrigerant like ammonia or CO2, so it is an environmental hazard, but far less than R22, R410A. R134A is kind of in the middle. It's even worse of a solution than R32 from an environmental perspective, but it's also not terrible. The important part is it's cheap. There's pending EPA regulations that might, in the medium term, we might start phasing out R134A. We might even eventually restrict it, as they've started doing in Europe. But for now, it is simply the best solution. It's not cost effective to pull this out unless there's new regulations. And that's something we found with hospitals all the time. A lot of the environmental output is really constrained by the current regulatory framework.
And lastly, we looked at the green vehicles, where we looked at converting from gas to electrical hybrid. And then we found out that full electric might not really be feasible to some of these hospitals and stuff. So Canala also looked at converting to hybrid, which looked more efficient.
Yeah, the real problem with electric vehicles is a very high first cost. When we were looking at different types of vehicles especially for a company purpose, when it's a company car, it usually doesn't go that far off the site. So you'd think, oh, well, I'm never going to have an issue with finding chargers like I would if it was a residential vehicle. But that first cost is still really hard to get around for an EV. For that reason, we recommend plug-in hybrids. Maybe you can only get 20 or 30 miles on your electrical only supply, but you're not really making trips more than 10 miles away from the facility with a maintenance vehicle at any given time. So hybrid vehicles, this is important with or without government assistance. There is currently government assistance. We don't know though if those grants are going to still be around in 4 years' time. But regardless, there's still a good payback period for hybrid vehicles. In the life of the car, you're going to see those economic and environmental savings.
Now, lastly, these are our energy savings and also payback period. In
Yeah, we've been holding all the numbers till the end. So the important parts are on the bottom here, right? This is from the 2023 to 2024. We got 1.61 times higher cost savings from expanding these projects. A lot of that expansion was done in vehicles, a lot of it was done in windows, and a lot of it was done in various lighting innovations and reusable foodware. Take a look at reusable foodware. You'll find something very interesting. It is an environmentally net negative program. See that minus 4.2 units of emissions, metric tons CO2. This is a very interesting case where we really have to consider the solutions in context. Some of the things you're going to find from an environmental point of view on their own are actually a net environmental loss, but they provide the organization with an opportunity for advancement in other areas. When we look at reusable foodware, it's a lot of money you can save by switching to it to pay for those more, objectively environmentally positive applications. Emissions, we got 5.25 times higher CO2 savings. We broke 1,000. We got to 1,300 metric tons over our 6 facilities combined. A little over 5 times more energy saved. A lot of that from reduced HVAC use from those building envelope changes. The outlier is 343 times more water savings. That's because of the faucet aerators. Kitchen sinks in a large cafeteria are running all the time. We go to the kitchen, we start talking to the staff, we show them how the aerators work, how they reduce flow, and their first thought is, oh, there's no way we'd be able to work with this. It would just be too burdensome, like a lot of these potential environmental restrictions. But we show them, we have our little measurement bag, we show them what 1.5 gallons per minute is, and they realize it's not so bad after all. That happens with a lot of our environmental systems. Just by talking to the staff and showing the people what they're actually going to be working with, you can break a lot of those stigmas and inherent suspicions of some of these environmental programs. And then, of course, we actually reduced the number of plastic savings because this year's facilities were already using a lot of reusables. And anesthetics is something new that we broke into. Just save a couple of pounds of nitrous oxide and a couple of liters of desflurane. These rural facilities don't use that much anesthetic, so it's okay to recommend a more costly anesthetic like sevoflurane when those environmental savings are there and the cost of harm is so small.
Also, something I forgot to add, like in our boiler room, so we kind of like identified using smart technologies to monitor the efficiency and also identify issues with this HVAC system and all that. So using a smart thermostat, it helps you look at which is working properly, which is faulty, which rooms are going above the set temperatures, which rooms are going up, below the set temperatures and all that. So it becomes easier to remotely control some of these temperature set points in this facility without having to, go around, looking at them one after the other and all that. So example of that technology is Train. Might be pretty expensive to buy and install, but it has proven to be really efficient in monitoring it.
In addition to the Train, TRANE, by the way, company offering a bunch of building automation systems. Honeywell offers some systems. and there's a system called SQSS, which is more of like a maintenance reporting thing. As much as it may be an inconvenience to get used to, all those electronic systems, email, text systems for reporting maintenance defects, your maintenance staff might get kind of annoyed when they're getting all those notifications and pings all the time, but it will make the facility more effective.
Thank you. Do we have questions from the audience?
Yeah, what's your calculations for the reusable in terms of what's the material that can be used in your use of your calculations, what material that is used for kind of thing?
Yeah, we did use the worm.
So we did use the worm to calculate that. So like we converted the amount of styrofoam, for example, that will be degraded. So we check what tons of these materials will be degraded. So we impute that in the worm calculator to get kind of like the CO2 savings that we would save from shifting from using those materials into use.
We have to make some assumptions about types of plastic. It's not actually that easy to find out just from examining the system itself what plastic is being used. But for the reusable, we assume that you convert to steel. We assume that maybe you have to replace your steel equipment once a year. A total replacement, of course, that's not realistic. You're not going to lose that much silverware. But even with that assumption, it's still definitely environmentally effective. You have to use the dishwashers more. That's how you get the water and energy losses from the program. But the cost savings are definitely there.
So you didn't take into account like the energy and water requirements of manufacturing the plastic?
We did not take any specific examination of the deliberate manufacturing cost. We only looked at this from the hospital's personal point of view. So that is the cost input to buy the system from some online store, and then to use your own in-house equipment to maintain the system.
So curiosity, do you see what the kind of break-even point would be for the stable at the end of the actual usable trays? So you mentioned the assumption that they're going to be replaced each year, right?
Yeah.
So we have
like how often would you have to replace them for it to be a better idea to stay disposable? We didn't do that analysis exactly. My suspicion from the calculations we did do is that you would have to be doing a complete utensil everything replacement, a 100% loss rate every month in order for it to not be cost effective to switch to.
Sorry, I was meaning in terms of metric tons of CO2.
In terms of I guess I don't understand what CO2 emissions are you asking if they're considered?
So it looks like it's negative CO2.
Yeah, so those values, the ones in red, those are like negative values from totally switching to this reusable, because you have to use dishwasher that means more electricity, more water and stuff. So we kind of consider it as a negative value. They are not savings. They are also part of the ones you emit into the environment, into the system.
If you're wondering why it's negative, it's that the benefit from reducing the amount of plastic used is outweighed by the increased utility emissions.
So in this case, the born tool that was being used. So I understand that usually gives out a metric ton of CO2 equivalency for the different processes in the waste cycle. And so in this case, is it where you're more looking at the GHGs being emitted from the actual usable utensil usage itself?
That's
the water and the energy, but not necessarily the waste itself from the plastic trays.
The warm calculator gave us the waste from the plastic. We used the P2 GHG calculator to get the dishwashers, and then we just to get the net emissions back.
Gotcha.
Yeah. I guess I would like to throw into those calculations. We also negated the some of the labor costs, because it's difficult to figure that out exactly how much your kitchen staff is going to spend, peeling onions as opposed to running trays through the OR. So it is as best as we can come up with.
Yeah. There's a lot of things where we have to do it in stages. So we staged last year's lighting calculations, didn't really take into account the lifetime, didn't take into account the lifetime benefit of the LEDs in the way we would like to, that's something we can correct for, right? Lighting calculations then didn't have the same hours per day usage as we did. So we can take a look at the sites and come up with a better hourly estimate. That's one of the ways we refine these foodware calculations is by looking at the increased utility effect, refining those aerator calculations, looking at how much water usage is made from that kitchen. Any other questions?
I do have a quick one. So you mentioned that you suggested about 1.5 GPMs GPM for the new aerators.
Yes.
What were they using before on average? Can you remember?
Sometimes they had damaged aerators or no aerators. I think the highest flow we saw was 9 gallons per minute.
Wow.
That is incredibly. When you turn on the faucet and you feel the recoil, you're doing it wrong. That's not.
Did it fit the bag? Were
Yeah.
you using the
Yeah,
bag?
Filled the bag. Yeah.
It filled the bag
Yeah.
with a 5 seconds.
Oh, yeah.
And even when we saw just what was probably a functioning aerator that was just old, maybe 2.2 gallons per minute, we saw that once. There's still measurable cost savings in replacing the aerator. The faucet aerators are one of those things. Usually, you say if it ain't broke, don't fix it. With faucet aerators, we say if it ain't broke, fix it anyway. The payback period is essentially instant. Replace those if you even breathe on them wrong. If they have any noticeable increase in flow rate, or if it's just been a while, maybe you have a lot of hard water in one facility and so your sinks are always getting clogged, just replace it. The payback period will cover it.